Howdy, it's Mr. Pete, your YouTube shop teacher again, and this is part 3 of a 3-part series on restoring an old drill press vise. Well, that didn't take long. Looks a lot better. I have a decent foundation now. I've already cut these bars. They are plated. It's nice steel, really. And I'm orienting them with numbers on them, and they'll go like that. Now I need to transfer the holes. I'm sure they weren't laid out exactly the same, so I'm going to transfer them. I think I could do it with a transfer punch, but I think I'll use transfer screws, 1/4 20. And I always like to spot those center punch holes on the little precision Cameron micro drill press, so I'm sure they will not move on me. Next, these 4 holes need to be drilled 1/4 inch and then counterbored for cap screws like this. And there is the counterbore. Okay, they fit up nicely. Now make sure you mark them on the side from which you want to countersink or counterbore so that you don't spoil the piece. Not that I've ever done that. So over to the drill press and countersink to the right depth, actually a little bit deeper than I might think, because in the case of these, they stick out just a little bit. Alright, now it's ready to mill off smooth on the top and on the faces of the jaws. Here I am at the Bridgeport, and this is a tough one because there's nothing square on these pieces. They were very inaccurately made. So I've got some high spots and some low spots, and I'm just going to square it up the best I can. And I would rather have this toe clamped onto the milling machine table rather than in a vise, but the clamps would be in the way. So I'll just do my very best on this and see what happens. Okay, that seemed to have cleaned up pretty well. This is the other jaw, and it's about the same thing, and I won't show all of that. Okay, they're looking pretty good. I know some people are going to say, why didn't you fly cut it? And that cast iron machines beautifully. Look at how black my hands are from the graphite. But it was a good grade of gray iron. Alright, let me put it back together and see what it looks like. A lot of different setups. All takes time. This is a very awkward object to square up. Now I'm checking it with a surface gauge here, and it is sitting on a parallel on the bottom side because the jaws here are sticking up. But it seems to be pretty good. And this is not a precision vise. This is just a drill press vise for rough work. It cannot be regarded as a high precision vise ever. Ready to mill. And finally, I will flip it over like this and do the other side off camera. And last but not least, a very light cut on the bottom just to true it up. Alright, the bottom is machined off. Do you remember a few minutes ago when I talked about what beautiful cast iron this is and how soft and how nicely it machined? Well, I got to take some of that back. I ran into a hard spot right in here, the likes of which I've never seen, and the sparks were flying, and I thought for sure the cutter was ruined, but that Niagara cutter was up to the task. It just occurred to me, those hard spots where I had trouble milling here actually were the spots where there was weld spatter on there, almost as if it was hard surfacing rod. Do you know what? There's only a couple things left to do on this vise. Break the corners, a little finishing work like that, make a handle, and give it another paint job. Now this is an historic moment. You probably will never see me paint again. This is John Deere green, and you know it's covering a lot better than it did on that first coat where there was no primer. This will be a bit tedious, but hope I can finish this before supper, and you will never see me paint again. Not too bad, if I dare say so myself. Just call me Rembrandt. Well, it's the next day and the paint is dry and it looks pretty decent considering it was brushed on rather than sprayed. And the second coat really covered well. It is John Deere green, probably inappropriate, but what the heck. So the next step, and probably the final one, is to remove the temporary handle and make another handle, and I'm going to make it longer. This is 3, I'll make it 4 or 4.5, but it does not need to be ridiculously long like this thing, or the out of proportion knobulated ends that someone put on there. So I really like the looks of the balls on the end of these rather than just a round piece or oh, you know what most of them look like. But I kind of like that. I did not make this one, but I'm going to replicate it. Well, these are 7/16 balls, and they look about proportional to the 5/16 rod. Now I need to drill holes in these, blind holes, not quite all the way through. And how am I going to do that? These are incredibly hard ball bearings. And I had a selection of them. I have a lot more than this, but I like the size ratio here between the two. But I need to anneal these or soften them in order to drill through them. So let's take a look at how I'm going to do that. You probably know, but there might be a few out there that do not know. This is a fire brick, and the whole idea here is to torch them until they're red hot, let them soak at that temperature, which is the critical temperature, probably around 15 or 1600 degrees, and then allow them to cool slowly and naturally. The slower the better, and that will remove the hardness. They are now about 600 degrees because they turned dark blue. This is a magnet. Notice that they lose their magnetic attraction at the critical temperature. Now what I do as they cool down is I play the torch on them a little bit, less and less, so they cool real slowly. Plus there's quite a bit of heat in the brick already anyway. Alright, let's see if I truly annealed it. We'll check it for hardness using a file. And the file bites right in, so they're soft and drillable. Now when I take it over to the lathe, the first thing I will do is put it in a 3-jaw chuck and face it off just a little bit of a flat spot, because if that isn't done, the drill bit's going to skate off to the side and will not find the center. Using my wonderful fine tip marker, I have marked the drill bits 3/8 deep. Now the reason I'm doing that rather than just watching the quill is there is a tendency for the ball to get pushed back in a 3-jaw chuck. There's just very little contact with the jaws, so that way I know truly how deep I'm going. I'll use a center drill to start with. Well, there it is. I've already got one held on with Loctite. Now this material was powder coated black, and I was going to take all that off, but then I realized it matches the balls quite well, although it will scuff off as it's moved back and forth in the screw here. But I will have to file just a little bit off here to clean it up in order to reduce the size. It's a little bit oversized because of the powder coating. And I'm not sure how well Loctite works on paint, so I'll file that off. Be right back. A little bit of the magical anaerobic called Loctite. And there it is, the finished restored vise. I changed it from a left hand to a right hand. Remember what Bubba did? I talked about that in video number 1 of this series, so check that out if you haven't seen it already. This is the old screw, the old jaws, and the old keeper that went on the end. Ready for another 50 years of service. Well, that completes the project, and it's so much better that turning it clockwise causes the vise to close rather than just the opposite before I started this project. So that's what the finished project looks like. Turned out pretty well. I'm happy with it. Hope you enjoyed the video series, and this is Mr. Pete saying so long for now, and be sure and watch my almost 1,100 other shop videos. Do a search under Mr. Pete 222 or tubalcain. This is the end of part 3 of a 3-part video. Make sure you have watched the other parts in case you missed them. And this is Mr. Pete tubalcain saying so long for now. I hope you enjoyed this video series on the rebuilding of a left-hand vise.